As we close out 2025, the world stands at a crossroads, shaped by a year of escalating global tensions and fractured alliances. Trade wars became reality, shaking economies and redrawing the lines of international cooperation. Old and new conflicts flared, testing leaders and exposing the fragility of peace. Aggressive tariffs upended global trade, sparking cycles of retaliation and economic uncertainty. Geopolitical rifts deepened, from the South China Sea to the Middle East, making the world feel more unpredictable than ever. Yet, despite fears of recession and runaway inflation, global systems proved surprisingly resilient. Nations scrambled to adapt, reworking alliances, supply chains, and economic strategies. But this resilience is not resolution. The root causes of turmoil remain unresolved. As 2026 begins, the world faces a complex web of challenges demanding bold, careful leadership. Fragile truces and economic pressures could still unravel, and the regulation of powerful technologies like AI looms large. The story of 2025 was survival in a storm. Now, the question is, can the world rebuild, or are we simply in the eye of the hurricane? The choices made in the coming year will determine whether we move toward recovery or face even greater upheaval. The stakes have never been higher. 2025 saw the dramatic return of America First, as President Trump's sweeping tariffs upended global commerce. These tariffs hit allies and rivals alike, forcing companies worldwide to rethink operations overnight. Trade relationships were thrown into chaos, with even close partners like Singapore facing steep new costs. The message was clear: buy American, or pay the price. A tit-for-tat trade war with China escalated, disrupting supply chains and leaving goods stranded at ports. The ripple effects were global, as the U.S. prioritized domestic interests over established trade norms. Even nations with favorable trade balances like Singapore were not spared, straining diplomatic ties. As 2025 ended, the threat of further tariffs loomed, especially in critical sectors like pharmaceuticals and semiconductors. The constant risk of escalation has forced every country to rethink economic dependencies. Trade can no longer be taken for granted, setting a tense stage for 2026. Nowhere was the impact of U.S. tariffs felt more than in Asia, where economies are deeply tied to global trade. China, the main target, retaliated by halting U.S. soybean purchases, hurting American farmers and escalating tensions. Southeast Asian nations faced both crisis and opportunity, disrupted by tariffs, but courted by the U.S. for new trade deals. These agreements offered relief, but forced countries to balance ties with both Washington and Beijing. The region responded by diversifying trade, strengthening ASEAN partnerships, and building economic resilience. By year's end, Asia's trade map was transformed, fragmented, complex, and cautious. A fragile U.S.-China truce brought temporary calm, but underlying tensions persisted. Southeast Asia entered 2026 wary, knowing great power rivalry would continue to shape their future. The lesson: agility and strategic independence are essential in a polarized world. The old certainties of trade are gone. Adaptation is now the rule. In October 2025, a fragile truce between the U.S. and China paused the tariff war, but few believed it would last. The deal hinged on China's promise to buy U.S. soybeans and ease rare earth export restrictions, benchmarks that could easily unravel. Taiwan remained the most dangerous flashpoint, with China ramping up military preparations and the U.S. maintaining strategic ambiguity. China's military expansion, including the launch of its advanced Fujian aircraft carrier, signaled a new era of power projection. The Indo-Pacific balance is shifting, and any miscalculation could trigger catastrophic conflict. The truce is a temporary pause, not a resolution. Trade, technology, and Taiwan will keep U.S.-China relations on a knife's edge in 2026. The world watches, knowing the stakes are global. The next move could change everything. In 2025, artificial intelligence leapt from the tech world to everyday life, transforming jobs and economies. Major companies slashed workforces, citing AI's efficiency, fueling public anxiety about the future of work. The word of the year, slop, captured skepticism about low-quality AI-generated content. Studies showed AI's double-edged sword boosting performance in fields like medicine, but eroding human skills and creativity. Leaders now face 5 key tensions: empowering novices versus experts, centralized versus decentralized AI, traditional versus agile organizations, speed versus deliberation, and top-down versus organic AI adoption. The US-China rivalry extended to AI, with China's DeepSeek chatbot challenging American dominance and accelerating Beijing's push for tech self-reliance. The race for AI supremacy is about more than economics. It's about shaping global power and societal norms. The choices made in 2026 will determine whether AI is a force for good or a source of new risks. The world must harness AI's benefits while managing its dangers. The future depends on it. While US-China tensions dominated headlines, regional conflicts simmered worldwide. In the South China Sea, a Chinese-Philippine standoff exposed Beijing's vulnerabilities and set the stage for ASEAN's renewed push for a code of conduct. In the Middle East, a US-brokered Gaza peace deal brought fragile calm, but its durability remains uncertain. Ceasefires in India, Pakistan, and Thailand, Cambodia offered hope, but require ongoing diplomacy. East Asia grew more volatile as Japan signaled willingness to defend Taiwan, drawing sharp rebukes from China. These hotspots show that global stability depends on more than just superpower rivalry. Leaders must manage multiple crises at once, not just the grand strategic competition. The world's peace is a complex multi-front challenge. Amid global turmoil, Singapore marked its 60th year of independence with pride and resilience. The ruling party's strong election win defied global anti-incumbency trends, thanks to proactive measures against rising living costs. Popular budget initiatives provided relief, but U.S. tariffs exposed Singapore's vulnerability as a small, trade-dependent nation. The episode reinforced the need for agility and strategic relevance on the world stage. Amid challenges, Singapore celebrated a historic achievement. Its men's football team qualified for the Asian Cup on merit. This sporting triumph became a symbol of national perseverance. Singapore's 2025 was a microcosm of the modern world, balancing celebration with vigilance. The nation looks to 2026, ready to adapt and thrive. As 2026 begins, world leaders face a daunting array of interconnected challenges. Managing US-China competition is crucial, not just to prevent conflict, but to enable cooperation on global threats. The global economy remains fragile, with the threat of renewed trade wars ever present. Leaders must reinforce rules-based trade and address domestic anxieties about inequality and job loss. AI's rapid rise demands urgent international norms to prevent destabilizing arms races and societal divisions. Above all, rebuilding trust between nations, institutions, and citizens is essential. The choices made now will shape whether we move toward cooperation or deeper division. The world's future hinges on leadership in this pivotal year. 2026 begins not with a clean slate, but with the heavy legacy of 2025's trade wars and rivalries. The US-China relationship remains the central drama, with their actions shaping global stability. A return to hostility could trigger economic shocks. Cooperation could provide the stability needed to tackle other crises. Leaders everywhere must guide their nations through uncertainty, technological disruption, and shifting alliances. For some, like Singapore, the challenge is to stay resilient and relevant. For others, it's turning fragile ceasefires into lasting peace. The rise of AI is a fundamental test of our ability to govern technology for the common good. 2026 is a hinge point in history, a moment where the path forward is not set. The world can choose confrontation or cooperation. The stakes are high, and the peace and prosperity of the future will be decided in the months ahead. The world is watching,